So we're probably going to get started in a second. Just wait for a few more people to join. But I'm going to explain kind of what Hot Topics is and kind of our heart behind that and why we want to kind of address some of these big conversations. Now, when you may have been in a Facebook group or Instagram and you may have seen a meme about something, when the pastor ... or when something happens on a Sunday ... And quite often these can spark controversies in the chats. Like sometimes it's like about being honoring, sometimes it's about perseverance, sometimes it's about rest, sometimes it's about taking a break. Whatever it is, there's always these controversial topics that seem to kind of get talked about on Facebook or on Instagram, but never actually have that much time spent on it. And so Hot Topics for us is all about choosing some of these topics that we've seen on Facebook, we've seen on Instagram, we've seen in the church and experienced personally, and trying to talk about it in a way that helps you guys, but also gives you the chance to share your experiences too. So it's going to be the third Thursday of every month. So we have an IG live that happens on the first Thursday of every month. And we're also going to have this Hot Topic series the third Thursday of every month. And you'll see like how that, like the schedule for that on Instagram. And so what that means is we'll do one of these once a month. These are going to get recorded. So anything, like if you want to watch it back later on, you can do that too. We'll have an access link for that. But this is a really cool chance for us to kind of get to know a creative, get to know some of the things that they do to tackle these topics, some of their thoughts on these topics. And hopefully it's going to help you guys do better and learn more within your church world. So this is all about helping us all grow together. So hopefully that sounds good to you guys. And this is episode 1. So thanks for being part of the Pioneer team. And I'm really excited to have Mr. Josh Whiting with us.
What is going on?
As Bright Coal. And Josh is going to be perfect for today's topic. But before I introduce today's topic, what I'm going to do is introduce Josh, and he's going to tell us a little bit more about who he is, where he is from, and what he does.
Hang on, Matt's asking about my hat. So my name's Josh. I'm from Augusta, Georgia. A lot of people here may know me as Bright Coal. And my sweet spot, what I love doing every day is logos for youth groups and churches. I've been doing that as Bright Coal for about 3 years now. Have learned a whole lot along the way. I kind of grew up in advertising, and I've been on staff at a church, been doing some other things, but the past 3 years has kind of been a big fun adventure for me. And now kind of entering the next chapter of that with the team at Vive launching the branding portion of their group. So a lot more of the same, just kind of carrying a different flag now. And I'll keep posting and existing as Bright Coal too, but I'm excited to kind of have some more people in the mix here with me. But yeah, I'm really pumped to talk about this today, because I think anybody that's been a graphic designer for more than 8 minutes has had some sort of story or experience to share around feedback, because, we're not in a vacuum. We're not artists. Somebody brings us to solve a problem or bring their idea to life. And so necessarily every project is kind of a dance and like a two-way street here. And, sometimes you step on each other's toes or miss the dip and drop your partner.
Yeah. So we'll kind of introduce that topic in a second.
Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. Josh has kind of alluded to what that is, but I just want to show you and give credit to Josh, because he is one of the most aesthetically pleasing designers that I've seen, especially on Instagram. I comment this most of the time. He does this thing where he posts in grids of 3. So every like project he's worked on, he has like 3 highlight posts that he posts. And then if you look at his grid, it's this perfectly orchestrated, like just colors.
You gotta wait till the third one's up, and Ruben always jumps in and says, "It's
on the third one." Yeah,
the grid is back.
Let me just show you guys. Like, I know this is like super janky, but like have a look. Like everything like connects in its own certain way. You see like that, the pink there, like this, all these little logos here. It's so sick.
Yeah,
the hot sheet there.
At some point, I'm going to stop doing that. And then like every post that for basically all of 2021 is just going to look like a hot mess, but whatever.
Hey, that's okay. I mean, we had it while it lasted, so that's all good.
There you go.
So yeah, today's hot topic, number 1, we thought that we've got like a big long list and we can't wait to share more with you. So don't think we're going to be running out of content anytime soon. We're definitely not. But this week, we really wanted to just tackle like one of the biggest talking points of church media and creativity in general, and that's feedback. And not only receiving feedback, but how to set yourself up well to do that. So we're going to talk in this episode, we're going to talk about communication channels. We're going to talk about some conflict. We're going to talk about ways that you can prepare yourself for feedback, and just a few things around that subject to help equip you guys to just go into meetings, to go into email conversations, or even conflict with hopefully some more tools in your back pocket. So I think what we're going to do is kind of split this up into two sections. We've got Let's Talk Feedback Part 1, Let's Talk Feedback Part 2, and it's all in this one episode. But the reason why we're splitting it into two pieces is because the journey to getting good feedback and the journey to responding to feedback starts with getting prepared for it. It doesn't start by receiving that email. And so the first part of this is talking about how to get set up to receive feedback well. Now, Josh is going to have a few insights on this because he's worked with hundreds of different clients at this point, all with varying degrees of style, of preferences, of community that it needs to fit in with. So Josh, maybe just talk a little bit more about your kind of what you've been working on in the last like 2-3 years, and like maybe the number of clients, how many revisions you might have done, like maybe just give some estimate on those like statistics.
Yeah, I don't know. It probably is around 100 a year, maybe. I'm not actually not sure. I haven't sharpened that too much. I know it's a good many, and I'm having quite a few conversations pretty much every day. Probably like 4 or 5 phone calls a week with new folks. Some people move on and don't work with me, but whatever that math ends up shaking out to be. So yeah, I've done this in advertising as well. So worked with for-profit businesses, and whether that's like larger organizations, same thing is true in church world, or hey, here's my wife and I'm bringing this like seed money to launch this business, and so a lot of different expectations kind of on that spectrum. And a lot of people think like the party is up here with the bigger groups, but I found that can be a little constricting too, but I don't want to jump too far ahead in anything.
I mean, I love that, because I think this is going to be really helpful when we start talking about when you receive feedback from certain people. But in terms of like your process, does your process change how you kind of assess your clients, how you do like a discovery call with them, like how you understand their needs? Does that change depending on the size, or is it just maybe talk about a little bit about your process?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is something that has been born out of a lot of trial and error. And I thought I knew how to do this before like day one of Bright Coal, but it's been something I've kind of just tweaked here and there all along the way. But the process right now looks like, hey, here's all the information you need to make a decision on my website. You jump in, you schedule a call, we hop on a kickoff call, and that's one part us to get to know each other. Like I would rather put a voice with a name rather than just handle most of the exchange through email. So we kind of build some rapport, get to know each other, and people are much better at having a conversation than they are at outlining like the vision of our church is this, and like here is like what makes us unique, and here's something, here's a local bird that would really make a ton of sense in our logo. Like nobody volunteers that stuff. So a lot of those little gold nuggets that you get for a project come when everybody's relaxed, on the same team, excited, just kind of like sharing stuff. And so one of the early things that I do to help set everybody up for success is let them know like, hey, I'm here with you. This is not an us like battling across the table thing. Nobody's trying to get as much as they can out of the relationship. Like I've got flat rates. I've got the same process for everybody, no matter what size, and all that stuff, just because I've found it is kind of the most helpful way to do it. Like if you can remove any kind of drama out of the situation as much as possible, and everybody just talks about the project together and aims in the same direction, you're going to be set up for wins, whether it's feedback or doing good work or whatever.
That's cool. And I think like as we're moving more into talking about feedback, I think it's important to know like this is where feedback is like make or break. This is where you can like actually make a difference, is by getting your processes and your channels set up well now. So if you're just on the like a prospective call with a client, or if you're like in the planning phases in your church working out how to get this project done, this is the perfect place to start working out how to create better feedback loops, how to create better feedback channels.
Yeah, so, and one of the ways I like to frame it out too is, you talked about the Facebook threads where designers are like complaining and whatever. And like, I hear your pain, but I also feel like the right mental model, you need to approach all these situations, whether it's a freelance client or a staff member inside of your church comes and asks for something. You are the host at a party. It is your job to keep the conversation flowing. It is your job to make sure everybody feels comfortable to share. It is your job to make sure, like, you also establish the ground rules, like, oh, we don't put our shoes on the couch or whatever. And you know, a lot of times we're just over there like mad that people are putting their shoes on the couch when you haven't set that precedence, or, you know, mad that somebody is holding on to feelings and share them right before the project goes live, because you haven't drawn that out of them yet.
And I think that's great, because let's start talking about expectations. So how much does setting expectations at the start of a project affect like the feedback processes and the overall quality of the project?
Yeah. And so one of the things that I like to do is, one, have a pretty firm process. So we have that like intro call, and then I will say, cool, like here is, you know, it looks a little different depending on the type of project. There's a clear path for each type of project. And a lot for most of like the logo projects, like the next step is y'all give me some amount of information, some inspiration pieces. I go back, I say, if they like this, they might like this, prep a structured deck. We like have a visual presentation that we walk through together. And I say, get all your stakeholders. Like, this is the part where I want to account for all the right opinions in the room, whether that's, you know, a spouse or whatever, anybody that has tipping power in this process. I want them on this call, and it needs to be like more than 3 people and less than 12 people. Cause, you know, if it's just me and you, I'm nervous. If it's me and 12 people, I'm nervous, because then you get into that, like, you know, the lowest common denominator wins. Like, the thing that everybody hates the least ends up being the idea that gets through. Like, that's not good.
Designed by committee, I think it's called.
Yeah. And so people kind of end up falling into one of those 2 ditches. Like, oh no, I have veto power. Like, you and I can handle this. Or we got to make sure the whole congregation's good with it. And so you have 100 people voting on the logo, and both of those are a mess, right? So you, again, are telling them like, hey, y'all pick the people, and I'm listening to you, but you like make sure the right voices are in this room. And that has been a massively big one. And so coming and having, hey, like, let's look at all these other inspiration pieces. Do you like this? What do you like? And then at that stage, you can also coach them on, well, that's cool. That is a cool idea, but I don't feel like it matches up with other things you told me about the ministry, or your name is too long to fit in that type of format. So you're able to kind of tackle some of those tougher conversations head on, rather than like throwing concepts over the fence and seeing if they like it, kind of thing, which is where everybody starts building angst almost immediately in the process. I don't put pen to paper until we've had this meeting.
That's really interesting. So I guess, like, if you were to put that into like a context, or like into some kind of like, I mean, the host of the party is a great analogy, because it says like you're in control of this. You have an element of control within this project. And I think that's really important for creatives to remember. Is like, you're not just being hired to push pen to paper or to pixel to artboard. You're being hired because of your ideas as well. Like, whether you're in the church team or whether you're like a freelance client or whatever it is, your role is not just the designer, but also the thinker. And so
but you're also you're not in charge. You're not the decision maker. And we always jump from like, either I am like, you know, the mule getting it done, or I'm in charge of the thing. There is no in between. And no, you are facilitating their dream happening.
Yeah. Problem solving is one of the best ways to describe it. Yeah. Because someone who problem solves both creates and does the thinking. So they work out a solution and then kind of actually hands-on start fixing it. So yeah, I think just creatives, like, one of the first things to know when you're getting set up for feedback is know that you have a stake in this as well. Like, you have a voice in this, you're trusted in this. And also, like what Josh said, like bringing people around you as well, making sure that you've set the expectations. Josh, is there anything else that you kind of do that sets like good boundaries, sets good expectations, to make sure, like, in 2 months' time, when you've already started putting pen to paper, like, some of these things don't come back and be like, hey, this isn't what we wanted, or this is completely different to what we were expecting? Like, is there anything else you do just to put in place?
Yeah. So I will, on like that kickoff call, like when we're talking about time frame and rates and, you know, what deliverables do you get out of this thing? Like, I have, it's kind of the same way that I would handle like a contract. Like, here's the bedrock thing that we're agreeing to. Now I'm always going, because I end up like, you know, I love working with the people that I work with. I'm always going to go a little bit above and beyond. I'm going to show grace whenever I can, but I always know too, like, hey, like what you're doing, like you're breaking what we talked about. Like, I had this experience. It doesn't happen very often at all, but I had an experience with the church where I walk through all this stuff. And then a weird thing happened where every single time we met, there was a different group of people in the room, and the church wasn't quite sure what they wanted the name to be. And like the target just moved through the whole process. And this was not early deal. Like I knew like what the process was. I've done it a bunch of times, and I'm saying like, hey, like this is not going the way it needs to. And I delivered a pretty great product to them at the end of the process. And they're like, hey, turns out we just need to like get our ducks in a row. And that thing went off the rails because, they kind of got out of process, but they knew that. They knew that. And even if they'd never done another logo project before, which I don't know if they had, like, because I was consistently like staying with the thing that we had agreed to originally, like it was evident like, oh, Josh isn't flaking out on him. Josh is not just over there mad in the corner. Like there's clearly defined scope that I could choose to say, cool, you guys, I'm going to give you a freebie on this extra stuff. Or, hey, no, y'all need to like figure yourself out and come back and we'll kind of reset.
That's I think like part of that is putting yourself in a positive place, right? Like knowing where you are and like preparing yourself. Like for instance, we bought this Land Rover, this old Land Rover, like a couple of months back, and me and my wife went to pick it up. It's like our fun car, and we were like, this is cheap, it's gonna be fun, but we know there's gonna be stuff that could go wrong with this, and we set ourselves the expectation of soon something could go seriously wrong, and like we just have to be mentally prepared for that. So we set the expectation going in. Sure enough, as soon as we picked up the car, the engine pretty much fell out. But
sad times.
But the thing is, we set the expectations. So we knew going into that what we should be prepared for.
Yeah,
and it sounds like that's the same thing of like preparing yourself mentally and like spiritually as well, because a lot of this can inflict a lot of like hurt if the feedback doesn't go right. So what do you do to like put yourself in a positive place?
Yeah, so I think some of it is just putting in the reps and like having done it for long enough time. I think a lot of times, like some of the most angry moments that I've felt, I was a young designer. I was so proud of something that I had made, but I didn't know like another option. Like I was like, I can't believe I pulled off this and you don't even like this. Like this is the best thing I've ever made. And I'm scared that I can't make another version of this for you. Right. Or, whether it's fear or insecurity or pride or whatever, you are placing yourself in the place that the project should have. The project should win. The best idea should win. And you and the client, whether it's, you're on staff at a church or freelancing, like everybody should be pointed towards that. Mm-hmm. And so like, know where, like you were saying, know yourself, know where you're at on the like kind of growth curve there. But some of the stuff that I've done to make calls go smoother, make projects go smoother before someone ever talks to me is by posting the type of work that I want to be hired for. And so they look at it and say, oh, like clearly this guy has done this thing ever before in his life. That earns him this amount of like respect. Mm-hmm. Oh, like he has clearly done this and has like thought through it. And when I launched Brightcoal, I came out with a rate sheet and product offering that were off, and it was killing every single phone call. I tore it down, and I spent 9 months working for a blank check. I would go to these guys and say, hey, I know I just stalked you on Instagram. Thank you for the phone call. What do you think about my business? Okay, cool. If you guys need help with anything, what would it be? Oh, you need a sermon series? How much do you think that's worth? $14? Cool. I'll do it for that. $900? Cool. I'll do it for that. And I did that for 9 months until I got a feel for, oh, this is what people need. And so like, that's where some of that confidence came from. And in addition to just like being able to do the craft of the work. But like you do that, you set expectations, you are showing them from minute zero, you have nothing to prove as being the expert. Like you're a guide on their journey. You are not, this is not the Josh show. This is not the Ruben show. Right. And when you do like pair those things up along with, other people recommending you, or they saw you on the Hot Topics thing or whatever, like all that stuff helps. But just the more things you can put in that bucket to help the other person feel good about the things you're saying, the better. Yeah.
And that's probably another point is there. I feel like even just seeing what Dustin's putting here, like I feel like a lot of creatives that are experienced, like yourself, like Dustin, you guys experimented for a long time and found what process works for you. Mm-hmm. Like you guys whether that's like charging nothing, whether that's asking for a blank check, like whatever that may be, even just like working out what clients you want to work with, it all took like experimentation. You said like 9 months. For me, like it took me at least a year to start working with clients that like I saw eye to eye with. Like a lot of the time I was just doing jobs to
Yeah.
make a living, and then I could start using the things I'd learned and my passion to like start making an income from that, like properly, like to do it as a job. So
What we have.
This is
Hey,
this
bud.
is Bear Whiting, guys.
Bear, I love that name.
We had something for me.
There's a prize came in the mail. Can I look at it in a few minutes? I'll look at it in a little bit, buddy. Daddy's on a phone call right now.
You
Okay.
have to ask Bear the question of what does he think about feedback in the church.
Bear does not like. He's
And
working
he's
on
run
the
out of the
feedback
room.
thing.
That's understandable.
Bear has his idea. It's his way or the highway. So we're working on that one right now.
Well, maybe like experimentation might help with that. Like, so going back to my point, I just think like for creatives, if you're new to creativity, if you're new to working with clients, if you're new to working with the church, experiment different ideas, experiment different processes and channels, and just see what like works for you. See what way you communicate with your client works. And I think that's going to help once you're comfortable, once you're confident, and once you're like happy and you feel like you know what you're doing, or at least you feel like you're prepared. When you go into those meetings, you can really like start to bring your expertise, bring your knowledge. And I think confidence is one of those big things within that. So just, I guess while we've got probably a few more minutes on this, Josh, on this part one, I just want to ask you a question, like more practically. Like, what do you use a particular type of software to manage projects? Do you use like what's your kind of like process practically to get people through like either it's feedback or like getting the brief set? Like what do you use?
Yeah. So in terms of like managing projects, up until a couple of months ago, I had a to-do list and I did not have project management because the last thing I wanted to do was respond in a client's project system because I was a part of like however many different projects. And then I didn't want to like say something over here, copy and paste status update in my own system just because like I'm the only person looking at it. But what I have done is since then is I'm a big believer in like, can we pay robots to do something that no human wants to do? Like transfer information from one place to another. And like, has this been paid yet? Yes or no? And so I've been using Asana, but that's more of a way to just track the status and watch a project kind of flow through the stages that it needs to.
Yeah.
But yeah, like really to me, the magic sauce is like figuring out your version of that process that I outlined and like getting those human touch points right. Like, because it's hard to get sometimes that stakeholders in a room or like if you're on staff and you're doing a sermon series or need a social graphic, like there's no reason to have a 5-person meeting over something like that, but you still have to deal with feedback.
Yeah.
And so, you might like, there's a thing that I've started using called Loom where you can talk and like record a quick screen video of something and like give some of that context that's going to come through a little passive aggressive in an email. They hear the tone of your voice. They hear you explaining why this is a good idea or not a good idea. And all that stuff. How do you prevent loads of back and forth feedback?
I think let's come back to that in a second. I feel like that's a part two.
Part two. Got it. So practically, like I don't care as much about tools. Like Slack is great. I have clients who text me sometimes. I use email. Like all of these are fine. I do believe in like building systems around those milestones in your project. So I have everybody fill out a project brief form. And it asks questions that I think are helpful. If I only had to ask 2 questions, it would be, how do you spell your group and show me some inspiration sources? There's other questions in there, but a lot of that we cover on the call.
Yeah.
So yeah, there you go. Learning to listen really well, like just will get you miles further than talent. Because when people hear you listening and like taking good notes, like it just that's one of the biggest like rapport builders ever. When they know that you're just not trying to muscle your own idea or your own ego through.
That's like, I think I'm in a similar process as well. Like, so I we do slightly different things. You're more over branding. I'm more on like the content creation side of things. So, but I try and plug into. So one of the things I do is when I work with a client is I assess like what's your communication system? So like one of the first things I do on a phone call, like your discovery calls, is I jump on, we talk about the projects that we're working on, whether that's like a continual like social thing or like sermon series, whatever it is, or maybe it's like a one-time project, like an album art cover.
Yeah.
Then we establish like how are we going to communicate this? So I may just plug into their project management system, whether that's Asana, Monday, Basecamp, whatever that is. So sometimes I plug into that, and then sometimes I kind of manage my own. But the one thing I'm trying to do is establish like, okay, before we start this, what communication channels are we going to use, and this is how you're going to leave feedback. So like you say, we're not like trying to pull from all these different areas. We have the human touch points set up so that we're not losing people or losing feedback.
One of the things that I picked up from another group that I subcontracted for is, you might be in Asana or Slack or something, and people are talking back and forth. Yeah, this looks good, or I like this. Ooh, cool, whatever. And you're like in the back of your mind, like, all right, so you're stoked about it. Is the team stoked about it? Is this approval to move forward with build out on the other pieces that look like this? So they have like a really simple little thing that I love so much. And they said this emoji, like the green check mark or the black check mark, means approved to proceed. So you can like banter back and forth, but until you see that, like that's the real deal. Or somebody might be too busy to respond in an eloquent way or like pat your back or good job. They just give you the green thing and okay, cool, I've got what I need. Like if they're in a meeting or whatever.
Yeah, that's really smart. So I guess that's kind of like our part one. We've probably got like another 15 minutes to go on to part two. So for part one, let's just try and recap this so everyone's like on the same page. So we're talking with part one, getting set up. You need to establish clear communication channels. So whether you're with a pastor, a leader, a client, work out with them before the project starts. Like for your next project while you're working at church, start by thinking about how we're going to communicate about this well. So set up a communication channel that works for you, and don't be afraid to experiment within that too. So that's the first thing, clear communication channel. Second thing is be confident in your abilities, be confident in the stake that you hold within the project. So make sure that you go in knowing that you're a valuable team member to this, you're a valuable addition, but also understand that you're working with a group of people that are paying you or hiring you or commissioning you to do this. So what they say is important too. And we'll get more onto that in the feedback part too. And then finally, what's the final thing? Setting expectations.
Green check marks. Oh, okay.
Green check marks, yeah. So just being on the same page, understanding what the expectations are, and having some things where there's human touch points so that you can make sure that the people that you're working with are happy. So the green check mark, the little email that says, hey, just checking in, that kind of thing, just making sure you're touching base, you're setting expectations, and you're feeling good about the work that you're doing. Hopefully that sums up part one. Like I said, this is being recorded, so if you ever want to go back and listen to one part of it, you're more than welcome to do so as well. But we're going to move on to part two. If you guys have any questions from what we just talked about, feel free to put it in the chat, and we're going to have some time at the end to do a Q&A. If you've got any questions for me or Josh, specific about our process, about some client stories, whatever it might be, put them in the chat, and we'll get back to that towards the end of this session. Thanks, Josh, for what you're bringing already. It's really good.
Absolutely. Dude, you're so organized. Like every time I get into these circumstances, like we were saying before the call, I could just keep talking until the whole time is over and just rabbit trail. But you're like, wait, checkpoint. Let's recap, everyone. Did you take your notes? It's astonishing, and I wish I had more of that bone when I get into these rooms. But I just like start chasing ideas.
Hey, well, I'm glad that I can at least bring some order to this. You're bringing the inspiration and the wisdom, so we're playing our roles. Okay, let's talk feedback part two. So we just talked about how to set up for feedback. Now we're going to talk about some of the things that are a little bit uncomfortable. This is receiving feedback. And sometimes we receive good feedback. And I would say probably 60% of the time, if you're like me, you probably receive more like, these are some changes. This is what we don't like. This is what we do like. So
this is a good start.
This is a good start. So you can see I'm still smiling. I haven't had a breakdown just yet. So there's hopefully going to be some things here that help you guys understand what it is to receive feedback and also just how to process it well. So the first point I've got here is how to process it in a healthy way. So Josh, from your years of experience, from your 100 clients per year, you must have received some negative feedback at certain points. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if you didn't, but surely you must have received one or two pieces of feedback here and there.
No, Ruben, this section's all on you. I've actually never received negative feedback on a project before.
Well,
so
I've got hundreds of stories.
I don't know. Yeah, no, that's it is one that, and I think that's another one, like you touched on, like the memes that go around where like, which is more infuriating, like make it pop or this is a good start, but like both of those are pretty tough. And like, you know, if you, depending on what day of the week it is, like that's hard to hear, especially, you know, whether you've just delivered 15 little things and you have to go back and change 9 of them, or you just spent 6 weeks working on one big idea, which is more of like my world. And to hear like, oh, this was a swing and a miss. Like, thanks, but now that we see it, we don't like what we all agreed was the goal in some of the earlier processes. It is tough to hear. One of the things that I do, again, I'm thinking more like bigger process thing, which is a large campaign or a logo or something, is I don't pitch in the room. I enjoy pitching. I enjoy telling people how much I sweated over their thing. I enjoy showing them the little details and the stuff about it. I know that can be intimidating for some people, or I think a lot of people do love talking about themselves and how great their work is. But one of the things that I've started doing is I will send like a video of me pitching, and they get the PDF and they can go sleep on it. That way they're not pressured in the moment to like something because Josh is excited about it and clearly worked hard on it. And so that's one way, like, I know, like, okay, cool, I'm sending this out. You guys sleep on it, you process, and, you know, it's not such a raw moment that everybody's like, in those pitch meetings. Another way that I've learned to process is, again, just reps, like hearing I don't like this, and then your brain translates, I don't like you and you're not good enough. The first few times, you know, when I was in high school and college was really tough, and I got mad at the person or whatever. Like, everybody's been there. But after you've just heard, I don't know about this for the 10,000th time, you don't take it quite so personally. And it's just more of like, okay, cool, how do we fix it? And one of the ways that I've gotten into, you know, I've really focused on logos. And so you start like fixing smaller and smaller problems. And like, I know based on what type of feedback I'm getting, if this is a tweak that can be handled over email, I'm like, yeah, no problem. Or a quick phone call, or oof, we missed it. Like, I didn't listen well. You guys changed direction. Some other factor has changed. We need to go back to that mood board meeting. So I kind of have a pretty good nose for what of those, how to respond to a different type of feedback, right? Or how to, and I think that comes back to like being a good host. When you hear vague feedback, check yourself. Don't just jump back in and start making changes. You need to, at that point, like assess, like, okay, do I have clarity? Do I feel like I know what they're saying? And repeat back to them, here's what I'm hearing. Is that right? And then sometimes they'll either say like, no, that isn't it, or we're not sure yet. I just wanted to hear your thoughts, or, you know, whatever. But before you jump in and make changes, make sure you've got what you need to hit it right the next time. Because, you know, having a couple of rounds of revisions is one thing. Being at round, like a Photoshop version 19, and everyone is still lost and angry, like, that's real bad. And that is on you. Like, you should have fixed that, right?
Yeah. The one thing you said about almost like detaching yourself from, like, I think a lot of people when they first starting out, they go, oh, because you don't like the work I just produced, because you have thoughts and feedback on it, therefore you have thoughts and feedback on me as a human being. Like, you don't like the design, therefore you don't like me. And I think it's really important to separate yourself from those two things. That's like one of the best things that you can do as a creative, is know that your work is not you and you are not your work. Like, they are two separate things, even though like what you do as a person and who you are as a person influences your work. It's not a direct reflection of your character and who you are. So that's the first.
I'm also
go for it.
Well, on that same point, if you don't care and you're not invested and you're not like excited about the project, that's a whole different ditch that you're in at that point.
Yeah.
Like, by definition, like, what we have to do is like lay it all out there on the line and then step back and say, this is what I think you should do. Here is like my best effort towards your idea. And then be okay with like taking the punches after that. But those punches are so much softer and so much more infrequent if you've done the setup stuff right.
Yeah. I think that comes down to being like doing things with excellence as well, right? Like as Christians, we're called to be excellent in what we do. And excellence doesn't mean perfect. Excellence means you give the best that you've got. So when like I put an Instagram post out, or when I make a design for a client, what I know in my heart is that I've put the best into it. Like I've put the maximum into it. And there's this saying like, do your best and let God do the rest. And like quite often it's like releasing work to a client is like, okay, I did my best. God, take that. And
that is very similar muscle.
Yeah. And if you don't, if this isn't the way that you want it to be, if this isn't the way that your client wants it to be, and ultimately, like as Christian creatives, if we are working for churches and stuff, we want to just make the most out of it. We want the overall thing to be about God, about like hope and Jesus. So what we're creating is, as long as it gets that message across at the end, as long as that we maximize that part of it, then it shouldn't really matter like how it looked or the style of it, whether it matched up with what we create. So just the first thing I would just say is try and detach yourself from that, and also understand like what you're doing and what you're producing, especially when you're working with churches. It really is like, okay, this is my best. As long as I'm doing what I'm doing at the start, I'm doing my best and putting the most effort into it. And also just like the most heart behind it. Sometimes it's not about how hard you worked on it. It's about like how much heart went into it. And it's probably hard to understand with my accent, how hard you worked on it and how much
I got you, dog. I got you.
Okay. So then just, like when you give that over, just be like, okay, God, this is the work that I just produced. I know I put my best into it, and like do what you need to do.
Yeah. And this is a bit of a controversial one, but on that same note, like if we spend all this time doing all this like prep work, me and the client and the team, like establishing the direction for the project, I don't pitch multiple ideas. I pitch what I believe in. I say, like, this is the best option. This is what I would do if I were in your shoes. We can talk about it. I'm not giving you an ultimatum here, but I'm saying like, I'm showing you like my best.
Yeah.
That way, because like invariably, like if you send two ideas, you like one of them better. Right.
Yeah.
And there've also been times where I'll be like, honesty goes a long way with basically everyone. There've been times where I said, hey, I'm not super clear. Now that I'm in this, I'm not super clear on the goal. Here's what I've got so far. And it's rare. Like you got to develop a nose for like when this is the right way to go. I'll say like, here's kind of where I'm at. I think we're in the neighborhood of being in the right area. Does anything here you're looking at jump out at you? And that's where like I've had one piece that I've done that a lot of people reference and like really like, or whatever, the Pursuit Youth logo. And that was one of them where like I came to him with a little bit of a mess and I thought it was done and I didn't quite feel, and I like talked to him on the call, or like we talked to it with the crew, and he was like, ooh, this stuff. And then I realized, oh, like here's a common thread between all the best ideas, clean it up. Now it's ready. And it just was a much better thing. And that's where you can have those kind of conversations when you're both fighting for the same thing. And another point is like, you get to design for church. We get to like paint pretty pictures on a computer for Jesus. Like that is the job that we get to do. I love my clients. I love the type of work that I get to do. And I love who it's ultimately for. So like if I design a logo for a youth pastor, it's also for his kids. I love everything in this mix. That is an honor, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know about you guys. I have done ad campaigns for personal injury attorneys that line their pockets, and everyone in that process hates each other and is just trying to like squeeze and get as much as they can out of it. That is not the reality here. And so when we get caught up in like the most frustrating, sad day at Bright Coal is better than any day I ever had in advertising, like the average Tuesday or whatever. And it's just because like I get to care about what I'm doing and who I'm doing it for, and keeping that in mind, and like, wow, I'm like honored to do this, and like walking with God through this career or whatever is like super cool.
Yeah.
And I think that's another one that helps you keep yourself out of the like ego zone, if you can like kind of have that as another guidepost.
Yeah. I that was incredible what you just said, because I feel like we're going to make a reel out of that now. That was like a good nugget. I really like that one.
I can name some personal injury attorneys if you want me to. Is that helpful? I'm not going to do that.
I'm going to just share what Dustin said here. He said, I can handle creative feedback. It's when the client says things that are personal, like, this doesn't seem like you, or are you doing okay? This wasn't your best work. I've been here before, and I just want to tell you a quick story. So when I first started like freelancing, I went down the avenue of like experimenting, doing whatever I could to make a living, essentially, like just start making some money. So I took on a client who wanted a video making, and I'm not a huge video guy. Like, I know how to produce videos, but I don't particularly enjoy it. And so I took on this project, and he told me exactly what he wanted. He sent me the clips, like he told me the music to use. So I was already pretty like refined and constrained in what I was making.
It's a tight little sandbox.
Yeah. So I made it and I sent it to him. And I was like, I've just modernized something that felt a little bit stale. And I was like, I'm pretty happy with this. I sent it over to him, and he called me and he said, Ruben, I don't think you put any effort into this. And I was like, no.
Tough.
Yeah. I was like, no. And this is the thing is, the thought process that immediately went through my mind is I know that I've done my best. Like, I knew that I put effort into that. I knew that I wanted to make that good, and I wanted to, and it was a Christian thing as well. So I was like, I wanted it to glorify the kingdom. I put in my best effort into that. Although I didn't particularly enjoy the project, I still put my best into it. And although that person comes back with feedback like, I don't,
kind of personal, like he took it personal.
Yeah. And so that's when you have to remove the feedback from being on you. And if someone does say like, I don't think this was your best work, that's okay. That's subjective, right? That's like someone, is that the right word? Subjective, or is it objective? Subjective, right?
Subjective is somebody's opinion.
Yeah. So subjective, like, that's what it is. It's someone else thinks, okay, this wasn't your best work. That's okay. Someone can be subjective. It's their opinion. And this doesn't seem like you. That's cool as well. Like, that's their opinion. If someone says like, I don't think you put, like, if someone says something to you, they're like, I don't think you did this, and you know in your heart that you did, then that's where we go back to that whole thing of like, if you do your best, no one can come at you because you just did what the best you could. So it kind of takes that pressure off you. So yeah, I've been there too, Dustin. And it can be kind of hurt. It can be painful. It can hurt, but I think just taking off that like pressure of like, I did my best, I checked my heart, and I knew like deep down that was something that I did to the best of my ability. And if you don't like it, then that's okay.
Yeah. And I've had that experience. It's way less so with Bright Coal. Like I'm trying to think if I've had somebody take like kind of a pot shot like that at me, but I've definitely experienced what you're talking about, where, small business owner comes in and it's like, why do I have to pay for, this thing? Like, did you even do any work, or, whatever? And there's some of that stuff where you can't like out process stuff. Like sometimes it's just like, oof, like that stinks. Like, I need a second.
Yeah. And
like, sometimes you just can't like out tweak. And some people are just kind of rough. Like, and that's not, that's not something you have to deal with all the time. Like, you might be in a toxic situation at the church that you're at, and you need to like help educate or train or leave. But yeah, I mean, sometimes you just take an L, like, and that's part of the gig too, right?
Yeah. And I think that's the thing, is that we can't control what other people say to us. We can't control their feedback and how they deliver it. And we can't control their hearts. We can't control their attitude. We can't control the way they communicate things. But what we can control is how we respond to it. We can control how prepared our hearts are. And also just like knowing like that what we did was the best of our ability. Like, kind of that resets everything. And we don't have to like hide behind anything, because it was like, this is me being vulnerable and putting it out there. And if you don't like it, that's okay. Like it can hurt, but you can minimize some of that pain by just knowing like you did the best that you could.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's one of those things too, where again, like I want to encourage people to like keep going, keep pushing if you're young and new or whatever, because when you have no clients and somebody doesn't like what you're saying, like you're thinking like, I need to change the way that I operate or how I design, or I'm not good enough. You start thinking these things when like, if you've got a line of clients, like got too much work to do, and somebody says they don't like something, and it's, one bad project out of 60, you're like, okay, I think the problem might be you. and like no hard feelings, but I'm not changing because like the other part is proof. Like the other part is a known variable, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things, this is like a weird angle, and I think it's in the wrong section. I should have talked about it in part 1, but and another thing is, I don't think I'm famous enough to get the feedback that you and Dustin got, where it's like, this doesn't seem like you. I'm not getting Ruben or Dustin quality that I'm expecting here, right? Like,
Maybe Dustin. Maybe not me.
Get out of here.
I don't think
Get
I'm
out of here.
famous enough.
No. So, one of the things, and this is another one, I'll fight some people on it. Get as narrow as possible with what you do. I do technically, like as of January this year, I do logos for youth groups. And like I've had smart people tell me like a couple of years ago, like that's crazy. Like there's youth groups have to do car washes to like pay for kickballs and stuff they need. I don't know if anybody plays kickball anymore, but and I was like, how are you gonna like have a family on doing that kind of stuff? But like the more you get narrow with who you're serving, the more you can get specific with your language. Like I know youth pastors, like I know how they talk and think and move, and like I've served under them. I've been in youth ministry. I get all that stuff, and I know logo design really well, and I know what they're expecting. And it's another one of those things. And like, I know what type of work I'm better at. And so I like very pungently like put my style out. And that's not to say it's the best or whatever, but it's like when somebody signs up, they've seen my rates, they've seen my process, they've seen me talk on Instagram, they've seen 14 other projects that I've done. They know what they're getting.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can keep delivering similar stuff for people, like you're really just narrowing down like where stuff can get funky. Like you were talking about doing a video project. That's not your jam.
Mm-hmm.
And you were talking about you may not have like a great process for that. Like maybe if you were a video guy, you would have said, hey, look, this is the time where we pause and I show you like a still of like part of the video. I'm not a video guy. I don't know how this stuff works, but like a you know, like a preview of like how it would work. And they're like, oh no, I actually don't like that. Well, you said, oh, well, I thought it was stale. And at that point you would have a check-in prior to somebody saying, where is my thing? It's not fancy. I don't like it. But I don't know. Here I am trying to fix unsolvable problems.
Well, I mean, I wish I had you like on the phone when I was going through that, because I feel
Ruben,
like
just text me, man. I'll solve any problem you've ever had in your life.
All right, cool. That's helpful.
My wife hates like small group with me because I'll like just start asking all these questions. I'm like, no. All of your like complex myriad family issues are easily solved, and I understand them all.
So are we going to have like a bright coal therapy? Like, is that going to be your next move?
I don't think it's called therapy. I think it is. Josh mistakenly assumes he has simple answers to everything. Segment.
Is that a podcast? I feel like that.
Yeah, it's easy. It's easy. Anybody pop on with any question, design or otherwise, and I will answer it.
Okay,
we'll like hang up. Next question.
Let's make that happen. I think we should. Okay, so we've got 10 minutes left, and I want to make sure that people have got a chance to ask some questions. So if you are watching right now, know that we're coming towards the end of our time. Get your questions in now. Put them in the chat. We'll mark it as a question, and we'll go through those in about 5 minutes' time. But I just wanted to just touch on disagreeing with feedback and how to I saw someone, I think it was Marvin, put in here. He said sometimes but for those clients that don't know what they want and they don't like any of your designs or ideas, I personally think it's okay to leave. And I think that's totally cool as well. Like if you get to a point where you guys aren't working together, you're not helping your client and your client's not helping you. And so all you're creating is this frustration pool where everyone just feels like they can't get the project done, or it feels like a compromise. So you're doing something you're not passionate about anymore, and the client's getting something that they didn't actually want in the first place. So there is definitely an opportunity for you to or there's a boundary for you guys to say, okay, it's time for me to move on. Or even like in the church world, I know if you're like working for a church and you're like employed there, you can't really just leave a project, but maybe it's time to like take a pause, have a conversation and say, this isn't working the way we're doing it right now. Let's go back to the start, like Josh said. Let's go to the discovery moment. Let's go to the point where we start looking at mood boards, and let's work out a new avenue. And sometimes you've got to draw that line. Otherwise, you're just going to end up both being with this project that no one actually liked. So Josh, I don't know if you've got any thoughts on disagreeing with feedback and kind of cutting the line.
Yeah. So that's another one where if I feel like the client is making, like there's vague feedback and then there's incorrect feedback, and incorrect in air quotes, but like, it's like, hey, what you're asking for is a bad idea. I feel personally responsible as a like there's empirically like, no, don't do that kind of stuff. Like, it's not an opinion. Like, it's just, this will be worse.
Yeah.
I feel responsible. This person has hired me to like help them through this journey. And I'll kind of couch it with, you're the boss. You are in charge of this. You're paying me. I'll do what you want to do. But I'm telling you, this is a mistake to do it this way. And I'll like soften it or change it or get, couch it however I need to. But I'm basically will push back and say, whoa, before you jump off this, like, let's make sure you understand what you're doing here. And sometimes people back off, sometimes they push through. But at that point, you're like relieved as the host of the party. Like, I told you not to eat the dog food. You want the dog food? That's fine. Like, we got hors d'oeuvres, but here you go.
You've made this analogy so deep that I feel like this is like a new like series on Netflix.
I should have been a pastor, or no, just a writing pastor, so I could like write metaphors, because I come up with them when they're unnecessary too.
So we've got Bright Cole, the copywriter, Bright Cole, the therapist, and Bright Cole, the branding guy. So this is more just us working out your future. I'm glad we could do this.
I love it. I love it.
Okay, so hopefully, like, you guys have got something out of that. I mean, firstly, I just want to say thanks to Josh for just joining us, giving his time, and just sharing some of his wisdom. And like, I couldn't think of anyone more perfect to be talking about this subject, because before we jumped on this call, we were saying about when we were in the waiting room, we were talking about how like Josh loves getting into the process of things. And I think a lot of this stuff, you'll save yourself a lot of hurt, and you'll save yourself a lot of time if you set up the right processes. So hopefully that's like the one thing you guys take away. But what I want to do now is move over to some questions and just spend some time there. And like I said, guys, leave some questions, pop them in the chat, and we'll get around to answering those. The first question is from Megan. I can't bring it up on the screen for some reason, but I'll just read it out. It says, what is your advice to help narrow down what a client wants when they give loads of creative freedom and they keep saying, go for it, we trust you, but then once you create it, it's not what they want? How do you prevent this? I see this happen to a lot of people.
Okay. So that mood board meeting, at the beginning of it, so some of these people, this is their first time talking to me. But I say like, hey, my goal is to walk away from this call, and I've got like, you develop a nose for like when you're done with the call, and you've got what you need to proceed with the project. But my goal for this call is like, we establish a North Star. Everybody agrees this is a win for the project. If we don't get that, we have another call, or like we need to keep talking. But then like again, it's one of those ditch things where everybody says like, I want this guy to like me. I want to work with a designer, and we trust you, like, go crazy, like, creative freedom. They think that they're giving you a gift. And all of us, like, if you've done it 4 times, you're like, oh yeah, I don't want creative freedom. Like, cause you know what that really means is like, it's another version of like, keep shooting until we like it or whatever. And then you've got other people that talk, like you touched on earlier, where it's like a really tight box, and you're like, there's like, you just want somebody to like click things for you.
Mm-hmm.
And neither one of those produce good results. So I'll tell them, look under that North Star. I'm also trying to build a sandbox. I'm trying to find a range of ideas that you guys feel good about, that we're all in agreement on. And like, this is too far. Like, this is too crazy. This is too conservative. This is whatever. And like, frame it out. And so that you've got some room to wiggle around and try some stuff in. Because I don't know about you guys, but there's plenty of times where I'm looking at inspiration pieces. I'm saying, oh, this could be cool. Like, if this and this, and you do it in monochrome and you add a swoosh here, like, that could be sick. But then you actually get down and sit down and do it, and you push and you push and you push, and it's not working, right?
Yeah.
If that's the only idea you've sold them, and your box is too tight, or the client has prescribed what they want you to do, and it's just not going to be a good fit, or it's not fresh or whatever, you don't have anywhere to go. You have to talk to them and get permission, or just like show them something that's not good and then fix it later. If it's too wide, you don't know what they actually want. So it's our job to say, like, this is kind of some room for me to play in. I know, how far, and you tell them on that call, like, you get permission to say like, hey, I want to explore this neighborhood. Are we in the right zone? Like, or what colors do you like? What if we map those colors onto this idea and then added this other crazy thing in there? Would you guys think that could be interesting? Like, I don't know exactly what that would look like. You don't know either, but we like all those pieces. And so I call it building a sandbox, and that is another big one that I feel like helps with that piece of it.
Great advice. We've got another question here from Matthew. He says, you mentioned you have flat rates regardless of project scale. Could you elaborate on that?
Yep. So again, I am a few days into my relationship with Vive. I don't know what the future holds necessarily, so I'm speaking to what I've been doing up to this point with Brightcoal as a business, not just Brightcoal as as a personality, if you will. But yeah, I enjoy meeting people and I enjoy talking about ideas. I think I speak for a lot of us when I say I don't enjoy selling. I can negotiate. I can play hardball. I develop some of those muscles in advertising. Like, well, what's your number? Well, what's your number? Like all that stuff. It's immensely unpleasant.
Mm-hmm.
It is soul sucking. It is an energy drain. It is one more thing to think about in the day that I don't want to do. So I knew for me, and this goes back to creating rigid structure and outlines in certain parts of your work and your business that allow you to be very creative and expressive within those confines. It allows you to have more energy for things that you're better at and care more about. So if I negotiated something $200 higher or lower or whatever, that is not worth the mental energy and stress and sadness. Plus it just always felt weird to me, right? So I said, I kind of worked from that. What do people want? I worked from the blank check thing to get a range of okay, this is what people are expecting for a sermon series back when I was doing those. And then I said, okay, what do I need to deliver? And let me set a rate. That way, when I have these phone calls, it's just this is what it is thing. And I would actually send them rates in a PDF before. So they'd have a deck of here's how it works. Here's what you get. Here's how much it costs. And there's A, B, C option or one option for whatever it is. But basically just orient somebody before they ever get on the phone with you. That way you're just taking that awkward piece of the call away. They say, yes, I want this. Thank you. Good job. And it's just a lot more fun interaction because then you really do get to spend the time getting to know each other, explaining, answering questions, asking questions about their ministry or the series or the logo, rather than having this cagey money talk. And some of you may be saying, well, aren't you leaving money on the table? Sure. There's situations where I know it's kind of a stretch for a smaller church to pay my rate for a logo, and I'll give them a break. And I can tell, I can choose, you can hear it in their voice too. We can't. And I'm like, what if we did it at this and work with them? And then there's other churches that I know have 10, 20,000 people and they could pay me more than my rate to do a different thing. And I still just like to keep it simple. And I think everybody's cool. If you're shooting straight with me on this, you'll definitely be honest with me about all these other things too.
Yeah.
People want to jump into a process that feels thought out. Humans are attracted to safety and clarity. And if something feels like I don't understand how this works, I don't understand how much it costs, that's a scary unknown. And you just at a core reptile level, you move away from it.
Mm-hmm.
If there is clarity, you move towards it because there's safety there. But yeah, so and I've kind of crept my rates up and adjusted them based on what I saw people needing. And I built it around, how can I consistently be profitable? And I track my hours on stuff. Can I consistently be profitable delivering this thing for this price with these deliverables? If yes, I want to make that deal 7 days a week. And if not, what do I need to adjust? Or can the client stomach this being at a higher price point to account for all the other stuff? And that again comes back to consistency in the boring stuff so you can have fun in the crazy stuff.
I love that.
That was a really long answer to that question. I'm sorry.
It was really good. I think we may have just time for one more question if there's any more you guys want to ask. I see a few people have got meetings to jump into, so we won't hold you if you guys need to go. Thanks for joining us as well if you are watching and you need to bounce. But maybe just one more question if anyone's got one, something they've been thinking about. We've got time. Just having a look. I think we might be good. Iago's going to get a tattoo.
Who's getting a tat during this call? I think
he's got a tattoo appointment now. I'm not sure. Oh, here you go. Just quickly, just as a little trivia one. Here we go.
Color palettes.
Yeah. How do you pick color palettes for logos? This will be our final one.
So, yeah, I am a big Pinterest guy. I like to not just grab ideas for specific projects, but just constantly be like I'll be walking in the gym or whatever. And then I'll just like, if I like it, I just add it to a board. I've got a color board, I've got a logo one, and then I've got one called Design Inspiration that is just generally like, oh, there's a cool poster, whatever, kind of a catch-all. And so I will pull stuff from the color. So say I've got like an idea that's working in black and in white, and then I'll go into that color board, and it could be like a pancake box or whatever. And I'm like, these colors are sick. Do these look good? Nope. Do these look good? Nope. And kind of go through that. Another one is a lot of times clients will like hint towards it on a call, and you kind of pull that out of them. Like, all right, so you don't like this design, but you really like the colors here. What if we tried those on this other idea that we talked about? And that's one. And then my secret weapon is one that you guys can't benefit from because it's my wife. I can't tell you, like I am technically skilled, but she has the real eye in the family. And it used to make me so mad, especially before before we were dating. And she was just some person that would piss me off in the middle school ministry. And I was in high school, and she would say, I hate this design. I was like, why? What's wrong with it? I don't know. I just don't like it. I'm like it's like the classic like thing that makes us furious. But over time, I've learned her eye, yeah, I call it the golden eye. It matches with like 80% of the population. So I'll show her stuff a lot of times before it goes out the door. If I'm like on the fence about it, say, is this good? Do you like this? Here's a little, like a baby bit of context about the group. And she'll say, meh. And I'll know like, oh, like it doesn't pop yet. And so it needs to kind of keep reworking. And I can't tell you how many times I've been in here working, and she'll come look over my shoulder and say, what if you tried aqua with that? And then I'll do it. And I'm like, what? And it's so like, I don't know how to help you with having a wife like mine, but maybe there is somebody in your life that is good at that stuff, and they're out of the industry, but could be somebody you just text late at night and ask them.
I mean, I wasn't expecting like wisdom in that thing. I thought you were just going to say interest, and then you brought wisdom to that as well. So thanks,
Ruben. You make me feel so good, bro.
Hey, that's my
You're
goal.
Organized and encouraging.
There we go. And this is the thing, this is where a good wife comes in, because she taught me both of those things. And most of the time, the organization comes from her, not from me. So thanks, Megan. Appreciate you.
Love that. It's the wife shout out session. That was not on the agenda, but it needs to happen. All the single
people just left. We lost their interest. Sorry, guys.
Awesome.
All right. Well, I think we're gonna wrap things up here. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Like I said, this is the first episode of Hot Topics, and we're gonna be doing this once every month, every third Thursday of the month at a certain time, depending on when the creative is available. It will be sometime in the late afternoon / evening of the third Thursday of every month. Try saying that 5 times over. So we're really excited to keep this series going. Can't wait to see you guys again. Keep an eye on that Instagram, so we'll let you know the next date that we're going to be doing this. And please, like, once this comes out, we'll put a link up on our story. If you guys just want to share that as well and get this, get what Josh has brought today, all this wisdom, get this to creatives, send it to them via text, send it via email, put it on your stories, whatever. We just love to get this message that Josh has just shared to as many people as possible. So thanks a lot, Josh. Really appreciate having you with us. Thank you for all the wisdom you just brought. And I'm going to go on Pinterest now and look at all your colors and all your palettes.
Do it. Steal away, my man, because it's not even stealing, but get whatever I can help you with.
All right. Thanks, guys, for coming, and we'll see you guys soon.
Adios.